all of this with the global warming and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
Still a scientific theory that has not been proven.
It's the greatest fraud that's been perpetrated on mankind this century.
Well, in terms of storms and droughts and floods, those things have always been with us.
I want to protect the water and the air, but I know that our Earth is going to be just fine with the burning of fossil fuels as long as they last.
In a way, this is a fresh start. We're going to hit the reset button. We're going to look at the things that the scientists are saying, and we're going to take the opportunity to accept or reject that information.
It's amazing. Oh.
My name is David Schechter. I'm a veteran reporter, and now I work for you. I'm taking real people out on the road to get their questions answered, and you're coming along for the ride. This is Verify Road Trip.
There's so many things I love about being a reporter.
Am I doing this right?
I'm just rabidly curious, and so I just want to know how everything in the world works.
So what do you think about climate change?
What do I think?
Finish that sentence.
What do I think about climate change? I guess I try to avoid it. Is it happening? I think it's happening, but I have not taken any of my own time to dig into that and be like, is that good information? And I feel like, so I have not formed my own opinion about it. I just have accepted others' opinions about it.
So on Verify, we have covered lots of controversial topics, but we've never talked about climate change, so I want to do that. What I'm looking for is a viewer who would come along on this trip with me to help me report it, someone who is skeptical about climate change. So if that's you or somebody you know, fill out the survey. Maybe we're going to Alaska.
Our role is not to get people to change their mind. Our role is to get somebody who doesn't believe this to face all the information that's out there. And if they change their mind, great. If they don't, that's fine too. But the topic needs to be explored by someone who says, I don't believe it.
Hey David, what's going on?
Hey Dave, this is Julie Branson.
And my little friend here.
Turning this on.
It always amazes me how many people want to do this.
I just don't believe that humans have caused this climate change.
I just have a hard time believing that humans are the cause of it.
I do not believe that man-made global warming is real.
A lot of beards.
Well, because beards are the spice of life.
I hear both sides of the fence.
I've read that it's happening and we're causing it, but I've also read that it's a global phenomenon that happens naturally.
He's just kind of saying, I'm unclear.
Right.
But we're looking for someone who is clear.
Yeah.
To it, I do not believe in climate change.
Overall, I am skeptical about it.
I personally believe that climate change is a hoax.
We definitely need someone who will express that I do not believe this. Prove it to me.
Because by the time we get everything ripped off, the rain will be done, it'll be dry. I need to sense it, I need to feel it, I need to see it. You know, if it's happening, I need to be shown this is what's happening.
That's Justin. He's a 38-year-old roofing contractor from Dallas, and he's politically conservative.
This is it. I just can't stand back and watch. When we get going back on, it's what we need to keep an eye on.
Right now we're going out to see Justin, who is a viewer who's going to come along with us on this crazy journey we've set up.
Is it changing? No, not from whenever I was a kid. I mean, my whole lifetime I haven't seen anything different.
Everyone has biases, including journalists. We have a process of we try to set that aside and go out and talk to the people and get the facts and then synthesize that all together. I think if he can do that, it's a huge win.
Do I think that people can change the climate? I don't think so. I don't think that they can change what the world is doing.
He doesn't think climate change is happening. He doesn't think people are the cause of it, and he doesn't really think it's an important problem. Hey!
Hey, welcome in. How's it going?
David.
I'm Justin. Nice
to meet you.
Yeah, here's some cups here. I don't know if y'all like to put sugar, creamer.
So you like Waylon Jennings?
I do.
Yeah.
When I first met David, when he came in, he seemed like a pretty chill dude.
So what do you think you've signed up for here? Do you have a sense of what's going to happen to you?
No, but I'm kind of ready for it.
What made you say, yeah, I'll do this?
Saw it on Facebook and I was like, man, that'd be kind of a cool experience. And I'm a skeptic, so I think that would kind of be right up my alley.
I want to establish off the bat that the consensus of climate scientists is that the climate is changing and humans are to blame. Over time, more and more climate change research papers have reached that conclusion. Only a small fraction now disagree.
The real weather data and climate data indicate it's just not much of an effect at all.
Dr. John Christie is one of the scientists who disagrees. He's the state climatologist of Alabama. So before we hit the road, I want Justin to hear why a minority of scientists like Christie are reaching a different conclusion.
Is the climate changing?
The climate is always changing. It depends upon how long a period you want to look at it, but the climate has been hotter in the past than it is today. It's been colder in the past than it is today.
A lot of the stuff that he was saying kind of matched up with everything that I was reading and believing in. We're going to go around and I guess see other scientists and stuff that's going to tell me that we are wrong. What kind of questions should I ask them?
Just ask the question, has the ice melted there before? And the answer is absolutely yes. When they talk about sea level rise, you could say, well, has sea level risen before? The answer is absolutely yes.
I'm questioning the wisdom of having Justin have that conversation with a scientist who denies climate change, because I'm worried now that Justin's just not going to hear anything else except for this guy. What are you picking up here?
Well, I'm picking up that I'm right. And there's so many of us out there, but yet so many, I guess, experts say that it is happening.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Probably because there's so much fake news. Everybody thinks it's fake news.
So this is the first of many stops for you.
Yeah.
We're going to Texas Tech in Lubbock, and we're going to go see Dr. Catherine Hayhoe.
Welcome to Texas Tech. So we got to find room 115, I think. Okay, so it's 103, 104. Oh no, it's that way. It's this way. Possibly this way. We're off to a good start. I'm David.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Catherine.
you.
Hi, I'm Justin.
Justin, good to meet you too.
Catherine Hayhoe is an internationally recognized climatologist.
Well, let me ask you, do you feel like you've seen stuff changing in your lifetime?
Not really.
Not really? Okay.
Yeah. I'm one of those like, man, everything's been changing for as long as this world has been going on.
It has.
How could it be any different than it has been for 10,000, 20,000, a million years ago, whatever?
What you see is that from year to year, the temperature goes up and down. But then what you see is over decades, it starts to kind of go up. So this, over short periods, is weather, but the average over long periods of time, at least 20 to 30 years, that's what we call climate.
Being in the classroom like that, her being a professor, I mean, she was definitely very passionate.
During the Industrial Revolution, what's the number one thing that we did differently?
Burn coal.
Exactly. The side effect is that when you burn coal and gas and oil, it produces carbon dioxide.
Catherine's telling us about carbon dioxide, CO2. It's found naturally in the Earth's atmosphere. As the sun's rays bounce off the planet, CO2 retains some of that heat. The rest escapes into space. When we add more carbon to the atmosphere, that traps in more of the sun's heat.
As far back as we can go in history, like I'm talking millions of years, we have no record of this much carbon going into the atmosphere this fast.
There's so much information here, to process. She's just got so much in her head.
Catherine is the co-author of this report from NASA and 12 other U.S. government agencies. Climatologists looked at the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It goes up and down for hundreds of thousands of years, but never above this line. Never until 1950, when the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere blows past the line. Okay, let's zoom into modern times. There's that rising carbon dioxide. Now here is global temperature. It's up 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit during the same time. Catherine says that is having major effects.
So here in Texas, what we're seeing is, first of all, our heavy rainfall is getting more frequent. It's making hurricanes stronger. And then out here in West Texas, we get droughts. And it turns out that the hotter it gets, the more intense our droughts are getting too. And then of course, we're getting more extreme summer heat as well.
He was 0 to 10, was a 3 on urgency. What are you 0 to 10 on urgency?
3 or 4 years ago, I would have been an 8. Now I think I'm a 9.
Wow.
You could see the light bulb just go off in his eyes, like, whoa.
She gave me some information that I have never in my life imagined that I, would hear, I guess.
The biggest myth that I've run into is that this thing only matters to polar bears, to people who live far away from us, and to future generations. And, like I was showing you, I actually crunched the data. I can say, no, it's not the future anymore, it's here. If we wait till everybody in Dallas sees what I see already, it's gonna be too late. So that's why it's so important to talk about this today.
She told us so much stuff.
Yeah.
Are you able to process all of it?
I'm a person who learns by seeing a lot. And with her being on the board, giving me all the different examples, all the charts, all the graphs, that helped me a lot be able to gain the information instead of just going. Yeah, this has been a hell of a road trip of covering some ground in Texas.
So we're going to inner space caverns near Austin now. So there's this professor who studies those things that are dripping off the top of the cavern, and he can tell what the climate was like, 10,000 years ago.
Nice to meet you, Justin. Jay Banner.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to Inner Space Caverns, Georgetown, Texas. 4 main things you want to have is a pair of knee pads, and then we got headlamps, a pair of gloves, and a helmet.
Does it look sexy?
No.
That's one of the things we're trying to do here with these records is reconstruct what's happening in Texas, but also look at changes that are happening on a global scale. All right, when we get down to the bottom, if you're taller than 5'7", watch your head.
When you first walk in, it's real pretty when you start seeing all the stalactites and stalagmites coming around.
This is cool.
Yeah, man.
There's a population of bats in this cave.
Sweet.
No worries about them. They have really good echolocation and they can avoid you.
Oh, there he goes.
Yeah.
It's so hard to trust that they have echolocation, right?
I'm not going to trust that. I'm learning that a cave is a great place to understand geologic time, and geologic time can tell you what's happened previously in the climate. You can see the rings.
You can see the rings, just like tree rings.
Oh, yeah. I had no idea that's what it looked like inside.
Yeah.
He's telling us these rings hold information about past climate, things like long-term weather patterns, droughts, and floods, and also how much carbon was in the atmosphere. They're formed by the minerals in the water that drips down into the cave.
All right, Justin, you're gonna be the leader. Here, I'll go ahead and.
Do you want me to tell your kids anything if you don't come out?
Nah. Just tell them I did it for research.
Going to get low, and we're going to get to a point where we're going to crawl.
I'm not super excited about going into tight spaces in the pitch black. This is like the stuff of my nightmares.
Right, so.
Not kidding.
We get to a certain point, and it gets so narrow. We're having our helmets on, we have gloves on.
It's pitch black, and there's mud under your knees and your feet and on your hands.
We're like squeezing through, trying to maneuver our bodies.
Yeah, there was a moment there where I'm like, I don't want to go forward, and I don't really want to go backward. I don't know what to do.
I didn't think my fat butt would actually get through there for a minute.
What does the study of a cave tell us about our changing climate?
Long-term changes, things we can't capture in the time we've been able to study climate through instruments like rain gauges, thermometers, things like that. Those records go back about 120 years or so.
And when you are studying and getting data pulled out of the stalactites and stuff, how accurate is the studies on that?
Plus or minus 50 years on a 10,000 year date, right? But by looking at the past, it may help us understand what we might be able to expect in the future. You know those CO2 curves you see? How they go up from like the 1970s on up to now, and it goes. You calculate that rate of change. You could calculate what we have from our past records of CO2, and calculate those changes. The rate of change happening today is 40,000 times faster.
So that's the difference. It's not the fact that it hasn't happened before, it's the fact that it's just increasingly rapid now.
That's right.
Than it was
exactly
at that time before.
Right.
He had what looked like a kind of an epiphany. I don't know if it's going to move the needle for him.
And that's what the issue is that we're all kind of scared about, I guess.
That is what we're very concerned, and rightly so. Some people are scared, and I think there's reason for being scared about our future.
Dr. Andy Dessler is a climatologist at Texas A&M.
Hey, Justin.
David?
And he was good enough to join us for a cup of coffee near campus.
I need some caffeine, man.
So the cool thing about the way Andy talks about climate change is he looks at it like a criminal investigation.
CO2 has blood all over it. It's that blood of the climate system all over it.
I like that analogy.
And so if you want to argue that it's not CO2, not only do you have to advance a hypothesis, but you also have to say, why does CO2 look so guilty?
Let's look at some of Andy's possible suspects. Is it the Earth's orbit getting closer to the sun? No. He says that kind of change would take thousands of years. Is it the sun getting hotter? No. The sun is in a phase where it's actually generating less heat. Is it events like El Nino which change the Earth's weather patterns? Andy says there is no research that supports the idea that these events can cause long-term changes in the climate. So that leaves carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. Andy says the historical connection is strong between increased carbon and increased temperature.
CO2 is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Not beyond a shadow of a doubt. There's always a shadow of a doubt. But beyond a reasonable doubt, there's really no question that we're responsible for the warming.
With it going up 1 degree Celsius, right. Why isn't everybody noticing? Why is everybody still going, it's not happening?
I think it is happening. I mean, it is, well,
you say it is. But everybody, and I talk to a ton of people that say it's not happening.
And they don't feel it.
They don't feel it.
You know, people just don't notice these slow changes.
I guess I can feel Justin now swinging back a little bit into a little bit more doubt, which is natural. He's taking a lot of information in.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can pinpoint here in Texas that you can go, this?
Yeah, probably summer 2011.
Lakes are drying up all over North Texas.
The 71st day this year at or above 100. That's once again #1 on the all-time list.
When it comes to Texas summers, the drier the summer, the hotter the temperature. And there have been some really hot, dry years here, but nothing compares to the summer of 2011. Scientists have concluded, because of climate change, that extremely hot summer days, like we saw in 2011, are now 10 times more likely to happen.
So, you'll still have average years, you'll still have cool years, but when you have a hot year, it's going to be worse.
Am I convinced yet on an actual real problem? I don't know, the jury's still out.
You said at the beginning, if I don't see it,
then I don't really know if it's happening.
Right.
So now it's time really to go, like, let's go see it.
Yeah.
I want you to see the effects.
My main takeaways from this first part of the trip were everybody's against me. No, I'm joking. They weren't really against me, but they had different opinions than me. I've thought all along that it's a natural occurrence, just a pattern of a cycle, or I just don't believe that it's something that we're causing or creating. This is a gorgeous state. I don't know if I've seen anything quite like this before.
I wanted to bring Justin to Alaska because it's warming faster here than any other state, and you can clearly see the effects of the warming.
Can't wait to see what, we're gonna go look at today, looking at the glacier and all that.
So we're about to go into, I guess, which is the world's longest one-way train tunnel. All right, here we go. Through the tunnel. About 1.5 miles through the mountain, and then when we get to the other side, we're gonna be able to hike to the Portage Glacier.
This is a route that people have been taking for thousands of years.
Our guide today is Dr. Brian Bretschneider. He's a climatologist with the University of Alaska, Fairbanks.
I had talked to Brian in advance. He told me it was basically an hour up and an hour down.
I didn't sign up for this, man.
So I thought it was gonna be a little bit hard, but it was way harder than he said it was.
Who planned this?
It was rocky. It was slippery. You had to check your footing all the time.
That mountain kicked my butt. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. It's impressive. From a distance, it's kind of like a postcard. It's like what you always thought a glacier would look like.
By every metric, by every measure, our temperatures are significantly warmer here than they have been decades ago.
Remember this report from 13 U.S. government agencies? Well, it says since the 1970s, the Earth has warmed 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and Alaska has warmed 3.5 degrees. In Alaska, many glaciers, like Portage Glacier, are disappearing.
At one point, about the early 1900s, it filled up this entire valley. There was no lake.
Pretty wild. So it's not here anymore.
Yeah, so where we're sitting right now would have been under about 500 to 700 feet of ice.
Oh, it's basically a skyscraper over our heads of ice that's no longer there. What do the glaciers tell us about climate change? What's the story they tell?
They get tremendous amounts of snow and precipitation, and they kind of are just barely below freezing. And so when you warm things up, even just a little bit, you turn a tremendous amount of that snow into rain.
So it's raining instead of snowing.
In much of the year, it's now raining instead of snowing.
So really, that's how a degree or two can make a difference.
All the difference. Here, so hold it.
That's pretty cool.
Ice from thousands of years ago.
Glacial ice mostly has a lot less air than the ice in your freezer.
Yeah.
Yeah, ice can be almost as hard as a rock, yeah.
Oh, this is a good rain. This is a legit rain.
It's a water filter. Hoping that it works. Filtered water from this runoff, and this is from Burns Glacier. Again, we'd be under hundreds of feet of ice, 500 to 700 feet, 50 or 60 years ago. But now we're standing on the beach. All right, there you go.
That's nice. Glacier meltwater.
How's that?
That's good stuff.
So, I mean, how do we know that that's just not what glaciers do? That, you know, that they don't just go away and then come back? I mean, how long have we been studying these glaciers to know whether or not that's what they do?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because glaciers, they're dynamic. They surge, they retreat, and they've done that for long before people were here. But it's the rate.
The rate. Whereas glaciers might have receded over hundreds or thousands of years, now it's decades. Take a look at this picture from Portage Glacier. For reference, we're about here. And this is where the ice stopped in 2011. Now go back to 1950 to see how much longer the glacier used to be. This report in the journal Climate Dynamics found many glaciers around the world are projected to lose more than 50% of their current ice volume by 2050. This is how fast Portage is receding. A little over 30 years ago, they built this visitor center in a spot where you could actually see the glacier. Now it's gone, and all you can see from here is the water.
Might be something to be worried about.
Here comes the coffee.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You are amazing, thank you.
Hot coffee. Thank you.
And we kind of see that maybe we were helping it out. We're accelerating the speed.
Well, why do you keep saying maybe we would help it out when he's saying,
well,
he's not saying that. He's not telling, no one's told you that.
That's just the way I'm thinking.
But he keeps saying things like probably or maybe. He's discounting what people are telling him. And I feel like he's really doubled down on, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go all the way there.
Is it we caused it, or are we helping it?
Yeah, so cause is probably a poor choice of words on my part, but significant contributor, I think is a better terminology. If you put a potato in the microwave and you hit the on button, you don't open the door and say, I wonder if it's gonna be warmer or not. It will, because you know how the science works. So it's the same with adding greenhouse gas. They absorb long-wave radiation, that's what they do.
Most people who are conservative are like, this is a bunch of BS. And most people who are liberal are like, oh no, this is actually happening.
And what I found is people on all sides have a lot of gaps in kind of the science of it.
The knowledge.
Yeah, so I know some people that are, hey, we gotta change everything, we gotta, drop everything and do this now, who don't understand the science at all. Everyone will be better served having more information.
Full disclosure, I think our elevational change is what, 4 feet?
Ah, thank God. That's the best news I've heard all day. This is insanely beautiful in here.
It is, isn't it?
Doug Causey is a biologist with the University of Alaska, Anchorage. He studies this area, including the salmon that spawn here.
So is this salmon right here?
Yes.
Okay.
And these are coho salmon.
Coho salmon?
Coho is what they're called. They're guarding where they laid their eggs because they've already spawned. So the cycle of life is that you breed, then you die, and you end up as fish in the stream.
You have to pay for college too.
That's right.
In there,
That's,
right?
That's right.
Pay for college.
To show us how warming temperatures here affect living things, Doug wants to take us into the stream so we can take some measurements. But Justin forgot his boots in the car.
It's gonna be cold. But I was like, hey, when in Alaska, why not roll up your pants and jump in the water?
This is an Alaska rigger, my friend.
Look at this guy. He's about to walk in. Is it cold?
A little bit.
Put it in the water and then you just let it sit. Right now, it's 4 degrees warmer than it was last year.
At this time.
Okay. So that's, okay, so we're talking about
That's one data point.
One data point, okay? So we would want to continue to collect this data to see maybe it's anomaly today. Fish numbers go up and down to be sure. But what we're seeing some disturbing patterns. We're seeing that the water temperature in streams is increasing. And for a fish like salmon, what to us would be a very small change turns out to be a very important big change for them.
Salmon are a foundation of this ecosystem. They help sustain mammals, birds, and other fish and plant life. And it's normal to see dead salmon. This is where they go to die. Doug says what's not normal is how few salmon we're seeing.
Compared to last year, this is half the number of fish we would normally see.
But it could be 1 degree and it'd be a big difference?
Yes. Even that small amount, whether it's 2 or 5 degrees, means they can't go through the reproductive cycle.
You know, you get the back and forth of people in your head saying that scientists can be motivated to say one thing or another. This guy, I don't think he'd give 2 rats about if the climate change was, you know, real or not. He wants the fish to come back. He wants the birds to be able to eat.
So that's not only affecting the glacier.
But now it's also affecting the wildlife as well. And when that happens, you're going to start looking for a reason. And the reason that we concluded to is the climate change is happening.
Primarily, yes. Salmon don't live by themselves in an aquarium. They're part of an ecosystem. And if they're being affected by climate change, the ecosystem is.
Now you're putting things in perspective. Even back home, we're not even feeling the change as they are here.
Does that concern you?
Yeah, it's starting to, quite a bit actually.
Anchorage, Alaska hit a record 90 degrees on the holiday.
A number that had never been recorded in the city ever before on record.
The Swan Lake fire has been raging for a month. Officials say in recent years these kinds of fires have become more frequent and persistent.
So maybe we'll go down and find a spot we can talk in an idyllic setting.
Carlin Ichewak is a native Alaskan who advocates for the rights of Indigenous people.
It's that relationship to the land that's really allowed us to see the adverse cumulative environmental impacts of climate change on a first-hand basis. Even if we at first didn't think anything was happening, it's pretty hard to ignore if you've lived here most of your life and you can see it over time.
In his lifetime, he's seen coastal erosion that's forcing villages to relocate, changing animal migration patterns during hunting season, and last summer, record heat and wildfires.
A lot of the trees are drier. They've died from invasive species. So no matter how the fire started, they're spreading further and faster and hotter than ever before.
How do you think about climate change? Is there a question that the climate is changing?
How do I think about climate change? I think about climate change in a dire straits kind of way. I think it's something that we don't think about enough.
Do you think we have time?
I don't think we have time. I think we're 10 years behind, at least, maybe more.
Because of how much you've seen with your own eyes?
How much I've seen with my own eyes. What I'm worried about is by the time folks in Texas don't have to question whether or not climate change is happening, we won't be able to reverse it. And we'll all just be in survival mode and figure out how we can adapt.
There is nothing that human beings do on land that doesn't depend on soil.
That's Mark Clark. He's a retired soil scientist with the United States Department of Agriculture.
Kind of a above average view, huh? The permafrost is the product of the accumulation of organic material. Soil scientists have a high-tech tool. You've heard of GPSs? This is our GPS. It's a ground-penetrating shovel. High-tech.
I like it.
You walk on the permafrost and it's like squishy and carpety and very pleasing actually to walk on.
Like a mat. It's like with a carpet that you sink a good 3 or 4 inches every time you take a step, it feels like.
I'm going to excavate a small hole here. I'll give you a little bit of that to look at. You can see it.
Oh wow, it was frozen.
And see, this is relatively low ice content in the soil.
Permafrost is earth and ice that stays frozen even in the summer. It stays frozen under a spongy, active layer of insulation that thaws and refreezes a little each year. Locked away in the permafrost is a massive amount of carbon.
In interior Alaska, some of that carbon is 40,000 years old.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
it's really old. This old carbon is starting to become exposed. That zone that thaws every summer is now extending further and further down. In some places, it's disappearing.
That thawing permafrost is causing infrastructure challenges in Alaska, like pavement that sags more and more every year as the frozen ground below disappears.
I stepped on the site about 40 years ago. Over 2 years, we looked at 2 different summers, looked at the soils around here. So this is an example of an area that is definitely changing and has changed fast in the last 40 years. In my tenure, we haven't been able to.
There used to be permafrost here 40 years. You saw it.
I saw it. So I'll give you a little bit of that ice.
Look at that.
That's way cool.
You'll be able to see the darker material that's got more carbon in it.
This darker layer here is just carbon rich.
It's carbon rich soil.
Right now we're in the subarctic, and half of the world's carbon that's inland is in the subarctic and above us in the Arctic.
We've reached a point where the air temperature is forcing these systems out of equilibrium, and they're starting to push carbon out of the soil and into the atmosphere now.
What you realize now is that we're really just have totally jacked with that system, allowing this carbon that's been stored away in a vault basically to just start coming out.
How much is that? Well, it's equivalent to the amount of CO2 that's currently in the air on the planet. It's like a hair trigger right now, and it's just, boy, it's just ready to be pulled. And
never my
blows
life.
me away.
Yeah.
Holy
like,
smokes.
I mean, just to hear that, it's like, wow.
That's a lot of carbon,
yeah.
isn't it?
It's pretty crazy. Pretty concerning as well.
So I feel like he's probably pretty comfortable now saying that the climate is changing abnormally. I'm not sure how he feels about what the cause of that is. I don't know if he's going to be able to say, it's people, it's done. I'm not sure that's where he is or not.
Well, we have this natural blanket that keeps us at just the right temperature for life. And then imagine somebody sneaks in and puts an extra blanket on you that you did not need. What happens? You start to sweat. You're like, who put the extra blanket on? That is what we're doing to our planet.
We're not the only Texans in Alaska right now. Catherine Hayhoe from Texas Tech, who was Justin's first interview, she's here too.
Like, out of everything that you saw, so not anything you heard, but something you saw, what do you feel like made the biggest impact?
The glacier really blew my mind to see how far it has receded.
Yeah.
And then getting to where the visitation center is and looking across and going, whoa.
It's not even there.
Yeah. And being, in Texas, we don't see nothing like that. When you talk about 2 degrees, even 5 degrees, that's just a hot summer.
Right.
Once you actually see the impact, firsthand like that, it does really change your mind about it.
And so the only reason we're getting warmer now is humans.
Wow.
Because you've said a couple times that
I think
we're
just helping it.
That we're helping.
That the humans are accelerating the speed of what was probably already going to happen in the first place.
Is that what's happening?
No, unfortunately not.
You're saying that it is solely the man's purpose.
At this time, it is. And so here's the ice age where we're cold. We get warmer like this, naturally. Nothing to do with humans. The warming peaks about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, which is just when it should. Like, we can calculate according to orbital cycles when it should peak. And it peaked 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, right when it should, and then it started going back down again.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that
So
crazy?
it's not that we're helping anything. It would actually, yeah.
We're going in the other direction.
Alright, are you ready for some fries? Here it comes. This is so incredible.
Made it. We're on a glacier, man.
Brother, what'd you think about that ride?
Dude, that's awesome.
You said that you needed to see it to believe it.
Yeah, I said prove it to me.
So here we are. We have 3 questions, right?
Yeah.
So the first one, is the climate changing in an abnormal way?
I would say so, yeah.
Do you think humans are causing it?
If not causing it, contributing in a major way.
0 to 10, how urgent is this problem for you?
Back I used to be a 2. I'd say I'm probably up to a 6 or 7 at least now.
That's a big change.
It's a big change.
I think I'm at an 8.
An 8?
Just seems to make all the other problems worse.
Yeah, I agree.
So you've made like a pretty significant change. Do you agree?
I do, yeah.
Can you still be a conservative and now believe that climate change is happening and that people are a major contributor?
Absolutely. I'd be foolish not to think that I can still be a conservative and just believe that or know that climate change is happening.
And what can you do about it?
Maybe pass on the knowledge to other people. Talk about it. Maybe I can start selling some solar shingles. I don't know, but like Catherine Hayhoe had said, even a small change by everybody. It doesn't have to be a big change by one person. It can be a small change by everybody. And I can take that to heart and think, that'll help. That'll help a lot.